Hello everyone, welcome back to Talking Politics. My name is Nico Johnson. I'm the political correspondent here at TPM. And today we have a special episode, and that's because we possibly have the best guest we've had so far, and that is the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Andrew Scheer. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, it was your last day in Parliament yesterday. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister couldn't attend, but you're wrapping up your leadership. I wanted to know what you think Canadians will remember about your tenure. What do you think your accomplishments have been?
Well, you're right. The Prime Minister didn't show up. He's the one that picked these dates and shut down Parliament, and then couldn't be bothered to come and work on behalf of Canadians. Very frustrated about that. My colleague Pierre Poilievre has put forward a motion saying that as long as he doesn't show up to work, he shouldn't get paid. So Conservatives are hopeful that will pass. When you look back at the party that I took over in 2017, and you think this is a party that got 99 seats in the 2015 election. Under my leadership, we got 121. We got 30% of the vote in 2015. In 2019, we got 34%. We reduced the Liberals to the weakest minority parliament, the strongest opposition party in Canadian history. I'm the first leader of a party to get more votes than a Trudeau. And we put down some very important markers. Our clear principled foreign policy as it relates to China, our fighting back against the Liberal tax hikes on small businesses, making the case for fiscal responsibility at a time when the Trudeau Liberals were just blowing past all their fiscal anchors, and fighting for Parliament during this crisis when the Liberals were trying to sideline parliamentary oversight. Conservatives, under my leadership, led the charge to ensure that Canadians appreciate that parliamentary oversight is not only necessary during a pandemic or during a crisis, it's essential.
The 2019 election, and I think that's going to be crucial to your legacy. Now, you didn't win. However, you did, as you said, achieve the most amount of seats I think any minority or any opposition party has received in Canada's history, I believe. So that's obviously impressive. However, you didn't win. And as some leadership candidates have said, it was an election that we should have won. Do you think that something went wrong there? And what do you attribute to you losing the 2019 election?
Well, as you point out, we had so many significant gains. We were shut out of Atlantic Canada in 2015. We gained a foothold. Massive gains in British Columbia, sweeping the prairie. So a lot of things went well. In Ontario, we had some specific challenges. If we look at some of the seats we won in British Columbia, there are ridings that are almost identical in terms of demographics and population in the GTA that we weren't able to win. So there's certainly a barrier to us connecting with voters in Ontario that prevented us from winning more seats. Although many of our candidates obtained more votes this time than they did in 2015. So we're still kind of going through all the data and looking at all the reasons for that. Clearly, we need to connect with voters in Ontario in a way that we weren't able to, and that's something the next leader is going to have to look at. As for the election being winnable, for sure, I believe that we could have won it. We could have definitely won more seats than the Liberals. There are a lot of factors at play, though. No election is ever guaranteed for a Conservative Party in Canada. And when you look at the way the other opposition parties were attacking us, we're not just fighting the Liberals, we're fighting the NDP, the Greens, the Bloc, the media most days. Their best to promote Liberal talking points and make it more difficult for us to get our message out. So it's never a guarantee for a Conservative Party to win an election. But I also believe that we deserve a lot of credit for making the election winnable. We had a great parliamentary team. We had a great parliamentary session. We were able to knock Justin Trudeau off this pedestal. The media establishment in Ontario were predicting 2, maybe even 3 guaranteed majority governments for Justin Trudeau. So the fact that we made it winnable, I think, was important. And now the next leader has so much to work with, so much of a stronger foundation to work with than what I inherited in 2017.
Do you think the next leader of the Conservative Party can defeat Justin Trudeau, even with the media establishment being against the Conservatives, even with a strong opposition and opposition parties who phrase the Conservatives as being reactionary, intolerable even? Is it possible for Conservatives to win again?
Yes, like I said, it's always a challenge. There's a real phenomenon in the world going on in the world right now where so many people have not heard the case for free market economics, for individual liberty, for limited government and more individual choice. When you look at the 80s, when we had the world's biggest laboratory experiment for big government intervention in people's lives and running the economy, and the misery that that caused. And remember, the Soviet bloc countries and the Eastern European countries, they all had the same rhetoric. You know, all the policies they put in place were to help poor people. All the policies they put in place were to help promote equality. They use the exact same message that the left is using today. But we know what happens when the government runs things. It makes a mess of it and it causes more misery. The challenge for Conservatives is now that there are many people who are voting today that didn't grow up with watching the wall come down or looking at the bread lines in East Berlin or things like that. So we need to find a way to make the case for those principles, say, in a way that will resonate with voters that we can't take for granted. You know, 10 years ago, we might have been able to take for granted the message that lower taxes create jobs. Today, I think we almost have to go back to basics and start, finding a way to repackage that or reconnect on those conservative principles.
You took over as party leader in 2017. You've obviously been at the front and centre of Canadian democracy. Do you think under Justin Trudeau's leadership, democracy has been strengthened in Canada?
Not at all. He has, after running on a campaign where he promised to do things differently, when he made all kinds of promises about oversight and transparency, here's a guy that, first of all, attempted to interfere in a criminal court proceeding as it relates to SNC Lavalin, then fired the independent attorney general who was standing up to him. That's not great for democracy. When the parliamentary committees were trying to investigate this to find out whether or not lines were crossed in the prime minister's office and exactly the extent of it, he used his majority to shut the committees down. There's all kinds of examples of him ignoring the will of opposition parties. Even remember the first bill that he tried to pass during this pandemic was aimed at giving him unlimited power to raise taxes and to spend money without any parliamentary approval, something that flies in the face of the very essence of our Westminster system. So time and time again, Justin Trudeau has shown that he doesn't like to be challenged, doesn't like to have people stand up against him. And when he doesn't get his own way, he gets in one of his moods. And to bully those who are standing up to him. So absolutely not. Our parliamentary institutions have been weakened. Our democratic institutions have been weakened under Justin Trudeau.
You touched on the SNC Lavalin scandal a little bit. And we're obviously embroiled in yet another Trudeau scandal with the we stuff. What does this reveal about the Trudeau government and the Liberal Party? Are all governments like this? Do they all give contracts to their friends? Or is this unique?
This is unique to Liberals. This is why Liberals run for office. And this is something unique to the Liberal Party. You know, the NDP at least have principles and they fight for things on the left. We fight for things on the center and the center right. We believe in core values. The Liberals don't. They are a vehicle for powerful people to hold positions of authority. And time again, whether it's a national unity crisis when the Liberals brought in the sponsorship program, or with this pandemic where they've tried to use the health crisis as cover for bailing out a Liberal-friendly organization, it's in their DNA. This is what they do. You look back to when the Conservatives were in power, and we had a fiscal crisis. We had a worldwide recession where things were falling off a cliff here in Canada. Manufacturing was down. Many people lost their jobs. And we came out with a massive stimulus proposal, investing in infrastructure, and we wanted to get it out the door quickly. We had it all audited by the Auditor General, not a single case of misappropriation of funds, not a single case of an insider deal. When Conservatives are in power, we are able to do things quickly without having these types of ethical lapses because it's not in our DNA the way it is in the Liberal Party.
Yes. I think you'll have quite a fantastic position leaving sort of the leadership of the Conservative Party, because I think it gives you some ability of hindsight, or at least objectivity when you look at the issues of Canada today. You are now a party grandee. And from that perspective, I wanted to ask you what you think the greatest issue facing Canada is. What do we need to solve in order to push this country forward?
I think it really is a fact that there is a trend towards more and more people putting all their faith in government, wanting government to do more, wanting more things to be paid for by the government, wanting government to intervene in more and more aspects of public life. I think that is a huge challenge, and the stifling of debate and dissent. I think that comes kind of part and parcel with an expansionist government. Is this idea that people who say something contrary to the establishment's narrative, we're seeing that they're losing their jobs. There's a university professor who's being censured because he dared to challenge some assertions on representation on campus as it relates to his field. And then there's another university professor who defended that one, and now he's in trouble. So this attempt to silence voices is not healthy for democracy. When the Liberals brought in their summer jobs attestation, forcing individuals and organizations to declare that they have the same values on several social issues as Justin Trudeau, that was a massive abuse of power and a violation of our charter rights. The trouble is that I think that trend is continuing. It's not that the Liberals pulled back from that, and it's continuing down that road. We're seeing people, like I said, lose their job, get silenced, canceled, and all for saying things that some people may disagree with. I think we're losing our commitment to free speech in this country.
Really? Well, that's rather ominous, but I have to say I agree with you. Finally, actually, well, second last question, and quite a pertinent one at that. I was wondering what you thought of Trudeau's, or at least the health minister's, response to the pandemic. This seems to me to be an issue which will shape my life and the lives of many others of my age. It's a crucial moment. How have we dealt with this pandemic? We're obviously doing much better than America, but in comparison to other countries, do you think that we can at least credit Trudeau with helping in that front?
No, I think Justin Trudeau's made things worse. We have a different system here in our country. The U.S. system is, as you know, much different, with each state having a lot of ability to do different things at different levels. In Canada, we had a lot of tools that the Prime Minister could have used wisely and prevented the spread of the virus. Back in February, Conservatives were calling for travel restrictions to be imposed on countries that were seeing huge spikes. We said, we were seeing these spikes in China and Italy and Iran. Until we know more about this virus, for heaven's sake, maybe we should start imposing some travel restrictions on these countries. Mm-hmm. Liberals called us racist for wanting to limit the interaction between people who have been exposed to the virus. This government dumped millions of pieces of personal protective equipment just before the pandemic hit. Not that they could have known that it was going to hit, but the whole point of having a warehouse for a stockpile is you're supposed to keep it updated so that when something unexpected happens, you're ready to go. And their programs have been abysmally flawed, overly complicated, many people falling through the cracks. Take the CERB, for instance. You earn $1 more than $1,000, you lose your entire CERB benefit. Many people are afraid to take that 5th or 6th shift or that 9th or 10th shift, knowing that if that puts them over $1,000 limit, they could be worse off in the month. That's preventing part of the workforce from re-engaging in economic activity. So sure, there are, because of our geography, because of some of the actions that the provincial governments took, we're better off than some countries, but we could have got things a lot better. We could have done things a lot better. Justin Trudeau could have made better decisions, but he refused to do so. So I think you're right. As you look at your generation and one coming after it, you're gonna have a huge bill to pay back for these mistakes. Unfortunately, another thing that not a lot of people are talking about is how the government's paying for all this. Some people say this must mean higher taxes. Well, I think the Liberals probably will raise taxes, but also the Bank of Canada is creating $5 billion worth of new currency out of thin air every single week. They're then they're pouring that money into the bond markets. So the investor community are getting access to the new money first. That has a huge consequence. If you look what the Liberals are doing with their super clusters initiative, a $1 billion program to give money to corporations. You look at the way they're financing this pandemic. It's the definition of trickle-down economics. They're pouring at the highest levels of Canadian society, and we'll be lucky if the people on the bottom get any of it at the end of the day.
Indeed, yeah. So, final question. What are you going to do after you resign as leader? Will you remain an MP?
Yes, I will. I love my riding of Regina Capel. I'm raising my family in Saskatchewan, and I love my community. I've been the member of parliament there for several terms now, and I plan on running in the next election. I will run in the next election, and I'm really going to focus on issues that are important to my riding. So, for example, people of Saskatchewan have been hit hard by the Liberal attack on the energy sector. We had a horrible harvest last fall, and the government still hasn't done anything to address the cash flow crisis. And there are some local projects in my riding that I'm looking forward to being a champion for. So staying focused on some local issues, and then whatever the new leader asks me to do. I'm a team player, I always have been. And if I won't be the quarterback on the field, I'm happy to play any other position that the new quarterback asks me to.
Mr. Scheer, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you.